Let me ask you something. What do you eat? Where does it come from? And what happens when the trucks stop moving? Because that's not a hypothetical. That's where we're headed. And I don't think most people understand why. They see oil prices, they see missiles, they see diplomacy collapsing, but they don't connect the dots to the thing that actually keeps them alive. Food. Everything in modern civilization, every tomato in your supermarket, every grain of rice in your pantry, every piece of chicken wrapped in plastic exists because of one thing: cheap energy. Remove cheap energy and the entire food system collapses. Not slowly, not over years, over weeks. And right now, 2 choke points that the world depends on for energy are closing simultaneously. This has never happened before. And I'm going to explain exactly why. No one is going to stop it. Okay, let's start with the basics. People think food comes from farms. And technically that's true. But modern farming has almost nothing to do with what your grandparents did. Modern industrial agriculture runs on fossil fuels. Every step. The fertilizer that makes crops grow, made from natural gas. The Haber-Bosch process, that's the chemical reaction that converts nitrogen in the air into ammonia for fertilizer, consumes about 1 to 2% of the entire world's energy supply. 1 to 2% of all energy on Earth just to make fertilizer. Without natural gas, you don't have fertilizer. Without fertilizer, crop yields drop by 40 to 50%. That means half the food disappears. Right there. Before we even talk about transport. Now the tractors, the harvesters, the irrigation pumps, all diesel. The processing plants that turn wheat into flour, that pasteurize milk, that freeze vegetables, all electricity, mostly from natural gas and oil. The refrigerated trucks that move food from farms to warehouses to supermarkets, diesel. The container ships that move grain across oceans, bunker fuel. The cold chain, that's the unbroken line of refrigeration from farm to fork, requires constant energy at every point. Break the cold chain for 12 hours and entire shipments of meat, dairy, and produce become garbage. The average meal in a developed country has traveled about 1,500 miles before it reaches your plate. 1,500 miles of fossil fuel at every step. Make sense? Food isn't an agricultural product anymore. It's an energy product, and the global food system is really just a branch of the global energy system. Cut the energy, you cut the food. So what's happening to the energy? 2 choke points. Let me explain why this matters more than anything else happening in this war. The Strait of Hormuz, 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. About 20% of the world's oil passes through it. About 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas. When the war started, when the United States launched that decapitation strike and killed Khomeini, Iran had a choice: fight the American military head on, which is suicide, or attack the foundation of the world economy. They chose the foundation. Iran started hitting the Gulf Cooperation Council's energy infrastructure. Qatar, which produces about 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas, was attacked. Saudi oil facilities hit. Kuwait, Bahrain, the Emirates, all targeted. And Hormuz is functionally closed. Oil was around $55 to $60 a barrel before the war. Now it's at 110 to 120. If Hormuz stays closed for another month, serious analysts are projecting 200, maybe 300. But people focus on the oil price and miss the bigger picture. It's not just about oil getting expensive. It's about what oil does. And what oil does is make food. Now here's the second choke point. And this is the one almost nobody is talking about. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait. The entrance to the Red Sea, where the Houthis operate. The Houthis have been disrupting shipping through there for a while now. But they've been calibrating. They haven't gone all out. Why? Because timing matters in game theory. You don't play your best card when the first card is still working. Right now, Hormuz is doing the damage. But when the timing is right, when the pressure needs to increase, the Houthis will close the second choke point. And when both choke points close simultaneously, something happens that has never happened in the history of global trade. The Middle East, which supplies about 30% of the world's oil and a quarter of its liquefied natural gas, becomes completely cut off. Ships can't go through Hormuz. They can't go through the Red Sea. The alternative is going around the entire continent of Africa. That adds 2 to 3 weeks to every journey. 2 to 3 weeks of extra fuel cost. 2 to 3 weeks of extra time. For perishable goods, that's not a delay. That's a death sentence. The food rots before it arrives. And I need you to understand who gets hit first. The Gulf states themselves. These countries, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, they import 80 to 90% of their food. They are desert nations. They don't grow food. They buy it. With Hormuz closed, Dubai runs out of food in about a week. 1 week, a city of 3.5 million people with 7 days of food, and it's not just Dubai. The entire Gulf Cooperation Council is in the same situation. Where do they get food when the strait is closed? They can't. In desalination, the process that gives them drinking water runs on natural gas. Iran has already shown it can hit that infrastructure. Iran's foreign minister called desalination their nuclear option, not radiation. Thirst. You cut the water. 300 million people in the Gulf have nothing to drink. That is leverage beyond anything a bomb can do. But here's the thing. It doesn't stop at the Gulf. This cascades. And I need you to follow the chain because this is where it gets really serious. Step 1. Energy prices. Spike. We're already seeing this. $110 to $120 a barrel and climbing. Step 2. Fertilizer prices spike. Natural gas is the feedstock for nitrogen fertilizer. Expensive gas means expensive fertilizer. We saw a preview of this in 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine and gas prices jumped. Fertilizer prices tripled. Farmers in Brazil, India, Africa couldn't afford it. Crop yields dropped, food prices surged worldwide. That was with one disruption in one region. Now we have 2 choke points closing in the most energy-dense region on Earth. Step 3, transport costs spike. Every truck, every ship, every train that moves food runs on fuel. When fuel doubles or triples, food transport costs double or triple. Some routes become uneconomical. It's cheaper to let the food rot than to ship it. Step 4, the cold chain breaks. Refrigeration is energy intensive. When energy costs spike, some operators cut corners. Some can afford to run their cooling systems at full capacity. Food spoils in transit. Shelves empty. Step 5, food exporting countries start hoarding. This is the game theory part, and it's critical. When food prices spike, what do food exporting countries do? They ban exports. They keep the food for their own people. India did this with wheat in 2022. Indonesia did it with palm oil. Russia restricted grain exports. It's rational. Every government's first duty is feeding its own population. But when exporters stop exporting, importers can't import. And the countries that depend on food imports, which is most of the Middle East, North Africa, and large parts of Asia, face famine. Not food insecurity, famine. And this is where the game theory becomes terrifying, because no actor has incentive to stop this cascade. Think about it. Iran's strategy is to destroy the world economy by attacking energy infrastructure. That's not a side effect. That's a plan. Iran can't beat America militarily, so it's attacking the foundation, cheap energy, that everything else depends on. The more damage Iran does to Gulf energy infrastructure, the more leverage it has. Why would Iran stop? The United States wants to project power and protect its interests. But every missile it fires, every ship it deploys costs money. And the war is driving energy prices up, which hurts the American economy. The United States is stuck in a trap. Fighting the war makes the economic damage worse. But stopping the war means Iran wins. Why would anyone compromise? The Houthis are ideologically committed and have nothing to lose. They control a choke point, and their leverage only increases as the crisis deepens. Why will they back off? Saudi Arabia is being attacked and can't defend itself effectively. If Saudi Arabia enters the war officially, it activates a mutual defense pact with Pakistan. Pakistan has nuclear weapons. Suddenly, nuclear powers are involved. The escalation ladder has no off-ramp. And food exporting countries, their incentive is to hoard. Every nation acts rationally in its own interest, and the collective result is catastrophe. This is what I call the energy trap. Civilization runs on cheap energy. Cheap energy makes food. Cheap energy moves food. Cheap energy stores food. When cheap energy disappears, food disappears. And the modern world has no backup system. We dismantled local agriculture in favor of global supply chains because it was more efficient. And it was more efficient when energy was cheap. Now that assumption is breaking, and there's no plan B. You can't rebuild local food production in 6 months. It takes years, and people need to eat today. And here's something else people aren't thinking about. The asymmetric warfare dimension. Iran produces Shahed drones for about $50,000 each, 500 per day, around 80,000 in stock. These drones are hitting oil refineries, desalination plants, port infrastructure. And how does the other side defend? With missiles that cost $1 million each, and they frequently miss, so they fire 2 or 3 per drone. You're spending $2 to $3 million to stop something that costs $50,000. That's not a war you can win by spending more. That's a war you lose precisely because you spend more. Every drone that hits a fertilizer plant or grain terminal, that's not just military damage. That's food that won't exist 6 months from now. And Iran has enough drones to keep this going for months. The math is devastating. Let me give you the formula. The professor's formula: mass times energy times coordination. The global food system has mass. 8 billion people depend on it. But the energy input is collapsing. And coordination, international coordination, requires trust and communication. What we're seeing right now is the opposite. Every country for itself. Export bans, hoarding, panic buying. Coordination is collapsing at exactly the moment it's needed most. When energy drops and coordination drops, it doesn't matter how much mass you have. The system fails. I want to put some numbers on this so you understand the scale. The world produces about 2.8 billion metric tons of grain per year. Sounds like a lot. But global grain reserves, the stockpiles that countries keep as a buffer, cover roughly 90 to 100 days of consumption. 3 months. If 2 major choke points close and stay closed for 3 months, the buffer runs out. And it won't take 3 months for the panic to start. It will take about 2 weeks because markets are forward-looking. Traders will see the choke points close, calculate the timeline, and start bidding up prices immediately. Within weeks, the poorest countries won't be able to afford grain at any price. That's not speculation. That's how commodity markets work. We saw it happen on a smaller scale during the 2008 food crisis, and again in 2022. This would be worse, much worse, because this time it's not one disruption. It's the entire energy foundation cracking at once. And don't forget the secondary players. South Korea imports nearly 100% of its oil through these maritime routes. Japan, about 80%. If both choke points close, these are 2 of the largest economies in Asia, suddenly unable to power their factories, heat their homes, or move their food. They may be forced to intervene militarily, just to reopen shipping lanes, which means the war expands. More players, more chaos, more disruption. Every new actor that enters the conflict adds another layer of unpredictability to the food supply chain. This is a cascading failure. It doesn't stop at one level. It keeps going down. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe Hormuz reopens quickly. Maybe the Houthis don't close the second choke point. Maybe some diplomatic miracle happens. But the logic points in one direction. Both sides are maximalists. After Ali Larijani was assassinated, the one person who could have negotiated a ceasefire, a negotiated end, became almost impossible. The new Iranian leadership will be more extreme, not less. That's always what happens when you kill the pragmatist. The hardliners take over, and on the American side, there is no appetite for compromise either. So the war continues. The choke points stay closed. Energy stays expensive. And the food system, this incredibly fragile, energy-dependent, globally interconnected system, starts to break. So what do you do with this information? I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm a professor, not a financial advisor, but I will say this. The people who understand the connection between energy and food, who understand that a war in the Persian Gulf is really a war on the global food supply, those people are ahead of everyone else. Because most people won't make this connection until the shelves are empty. And by then, it's too late. The question you should be asking isn't whether this will happen. The question is how long the buffer lasts. 90 days of reserves. 2 choke points closing, no actor with the incentive to stop. I could be wrong. But the math is the math. And the math says the clock is already ticking.